Who's going to give me 50? 25, 15, 10. Thank you, 10. Now 5. What do you get? 5, 15, 10, 15. Now 5, 5. What do you get? 5. Thank you. Now 20. 15, 20. Now 20. We get 20. Now 20. Now 20. What do you get? 20. Got 15. Now 20. 15. Now 20. We get now 25. 5. Now 5. What do you get? 5. Now 20. Now 25. 20. Now 5. 5. What do you get? 5. Now 25. Sold. $20.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast, where we'll introduce sheriffs and deputies across Ohio. During this conversation, you'll get to know the men and women serving you and hear all about the good work being done in the Buckeye State every day. Now let's join your host, Paulding County Sheriff Jason Landers, and today's special guest. This episode is sponsored by the Buckeye State Educational Foundation.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're here today with Sheriff John Hinton from Morrow County. I'm Jason Landers, Sheriff in Paulding County, the host of today's podcast. John, welcome in from Morrow County, Ohio. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, but thanks for having me up here.
Good. How was the drive over here to the flatlands of Northwest Ohio?
It was interesting. I've been to Van Wert, but I don't believe I have ever been to Paulding. So this would be the first time I've ever been to Paulding County. When I got here, the first thing I was like, where does everybody deer hunt? Because it's just, and if you've never been up here, it's all open fields, a lot of windmills and little patches of woods. And I'm like, that must be where all the deer hide.
Yeah, it is, man. I have a wooded area behind my house, and every evening and in the morning they migrate out. Last night there was probably about 15, and they just come right out into the field and eat around there. They'll come up to our pond and drink some water, and then they run over to the river and go back into the woods. So you're right, man. That's where the deer hunting takes place here in Northwest Ohio. That's for sure. Well, it's good to have you in, man. You're episode number 3 of the BSSA podcast, and we're moving right along. And this thing's gaining popularity as the day goes on, and we're pretty excited about that and look forward to you having some success. Connecting with your community with this podcast is kind of the vision. And so to talk a little bit about you is what we're going to do in the first part of this before we take our ad break with our sponsorship. So, John, if you would, just tell us about you, who you are, where you from, where'd you go to school? Tell us a little bit about Sheriff John Hinton.
Where to begin? So, first, I want to give a shout out to my wife and kids. So I'm married. My wife's name is Kelly. We have been married. I better not get this wrong. I think this will be 10 years this year. It's just 2024. Yeah, we were married in 2014. I got married a little late in life, probably later than most people. So I do have I have an 8-year-old daughter and a soon-to-be 6-year-old daughter at the end of this month. So I was born and raised in Morrow County. Graduated from Northmore High School, which, when I graduated, there was only 83 people in the class, which was big for then. They saw a little bit of a growth, and now it's back to, I think they may only graduate 60 to 70 kids a year now. So it's kind of went back to how it was when I was in school. So,
yeah. What kind of involvements did you have when you were in high school? Did you get into athletics, or were you all academics?
Oh, I was not academics. So I played 3 sports. I was football, wrestling, and baseball. My favorite sport was football. My best sport was wrestling. And baseball was just so I had something to do in the spring, I guess. I wasn't very good. In fact, I was so bad at baseball that I had 4 hits my senior year, and 2 of them were home runs.
Nice.
So if I did hit the ball, it went a mile, but making contact was another problem. I had a hole in my swing that was probably about the size of the Grand Canyon. So.
Nice. So you talk about your favorite sport was football. Your best sport was wrestling. Wrestling-wise, individually, did you make it very far into the postseason?
So I was 2-time All-Ohio in wrestling. My junior year, I finished 4th, and my senior year, I finished 3rd in the state.
Nice. So that's timely because last weekend was just the state tournament here in Ohio. We had 3 kids from our county that were able to make it down to Columbus. So for me, it's kind of neat. I like to get on the Bombs page and I follow those kids from our community or someone that I might know and just update the tournament brackets throughout the days and see how they do. I think that's pretty neat. And I'm a basketball guy, but I think it's really cool to watch our local people succeed. Yeah.
So in Morrow County, we had 5 from Northmore qualify. I believe there was 3 from Highland that qualified. Well, before I think they had a girl that qualified as well, and then Cardington had a girl that qualified for the state tournament as well. And out of all of them, Northmore ended up with 3 state placers, 2 fourths, and an 8th. Highland had a state runner up, the coach's son, actually, who I was friends with. He went to Galleon High School, which is in Crawford County, and I was a couple years ahead of him. But we went to the same tournaments and really became friends afterwards. Because I spent some time coaching, and then now I'm officiating wrestling, so I see him when I'm out officiating as well. So his son finished second, and I believe that was the only placer they had. Was his son. So
nice. So hey, when we get, like I talk about, connecting with communities, how cool is that? I think when your citizens in your community or otherwise are listening to this podcast to just see the success that from last weekend with your wrestling and the involvement with that, I think that's just important for people to understand. How connected that we can be with the communities that we're serving. So now we graduated from high school. What happens next? College, military, go straight to the police academy. What happened with John?
So I had a college scholarship to a little place called Iowa Central for wrestling. Got there and found out that college was not for me. Came back home, kind of bounced around a little bit, and actually in 1998 got hired by the sheriff's office as a correction officer. Went to the police academy in 1999 over at Marion Technical College, and then was on the road in the year 2000, and kind of never looked back since. Spent 8 years at the sheriff. Well, 8 years on the road. So in 2008, I actually left there and I went to Alaska. And everyone's like, "Well, how'd you end up in Alaska?" Well, I had a buddy living up there I didn't know at the time, and he called me on the phone one day and said, "Hey, I'm living in Alaska. You ought to come up. You'd like it." Still single, I said, well, what the heck? Off to Alaska I went. And I worked for the Department of the Army for a little bit and worked for the Alaska State Troopers while I was up there. Loved living up there, but ended up after about 2 years, came back home, got hired back at the sheriff's office where for 3 years I was a detective, running the detective bureau, working drug cases, burglaries, anything that came through like that. And then a chief of police job in the village of Cardington, which is also in Morrow County, opened up. Applied for that, got hired there, and for 3.5 years I was the police chief there. And then the sheriff before me, Steve Brenneman, announced he was going to retire. I got asked to run for sheriff, threw my hat in the ring, and here I am.
Here you are.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So, I didn't realize some of those things about you. So you bounced around in different jobs, and by the time you assumed the office of sheriff, had a well-rounded perspective from Alaska to Ohio to small-town chief of police and all those things to be able to bring into that to that office once you took the head job. Yeah,
and it's been it's been a great ride. I can't complain. I've seen and done things that some people, that may never get the chance, but probably being the chief of that small town actually probably prepared me the most for sheriff, because it was a one-stop light town, and my arm would get tired. All I do was wave at people every day, and it actually helped me, because, growing up, I was kind of shy, so it actually kind of helped me get out of my shell. I got out and I walked around every day. I talked to people. So it helped me that way. And, today, I still try to get out, still try to meet people, still try to talk to people.
Yeah, and you just said something that resonates with me, man. I am a huge wave at people person, right? So, when I was a young deputy, one of the things, I followed a tenured sheriff. My predecessor was a sheriff for 20 years here. And one of the things he told me as a brand new deputy out of the jail into the car was that we wave at people. We serve the people. We work for the people. He's an elected official and all these things. And one of the things that was very important to him to teach young people was that we wave at people. We acknowledge them when we go past them. And now as the sheriff, and I try to pass that on to my deputies when I get that opportunity, the feedback, and I don't know if this happens for you, but maybe this is why you got elected sheriff, man, you wave at people. I hear that. I hear that from the community. I go to a coffee shop and someone might acknowledge the fact that the deputy waved at them. I will hear also those that don't wave at them. And so maybe some other law enforcement organizations that don't wear the black shirts like we do that aren't, as friendly at waving at people when they pass. I think that's a huge thing, and it just lets folks know that you acknowledge them when you go by them, and they see it too. And I talk to that a lot when I get an opportunity, when we hire someone or at some point throughout their career, and I acknowledge when someone tells me, we're a small town, so most of our community know the deputies that are patrolling, or they'll know their car numbers, and they'll say, hey, the person driving plate 17, waved at me and went by. It's pretty cool, and I make sure that they know that so people hear about it. Let's do the math for everyone listening real quick. Then you talked about all these different jobs that you were in law enforcement. How many years of law enforcement do you have to date?
This year will be number 26.
26 years, man. That's awesome. I really think, at 25, there's different landmarks throughout our career that's really cool. I think 2 years is really a year of service for new deputies for us that really lets people know if this job's for them. You've really seen just about everything in 2 years period of time. It's kind of our internal belief at our office that, you've probably handled a robbery. You've handled a slew of domestics. You've arrested, drunk drivers. You've wrote speeding tickets. You've been yelled at for different things. You've dealt with the anti-government and law enforcement people. You've been hugged and cried. You delivered death messages, done all these things that we do in the first couple of years. And we really think that if you get past that hump, you're probably built for our profession. Then you want to get to that 5-year mark, right? And then you get to 10 years. But 25 years, man, to be able to do this job for 25 years consistently and do it the right way and still have a normal mind about yourself, still have your family at home, man, I think that's huge. So that's good. Let's turn just a little bit. These are some things I think is pretty cool about Sheriff John Hinton. For those of you at home may know some of these things. Let's talk a little bit about your hobbies and interests. You talked a little bit about refereeing basketball. Tell us a little bit about some of your involvements outside of the sheriff's office, some of the things that you do on the side. And if you want to auction them off and sing them to me, do that, whatever. Talk to me about a few of those things that you're interested in.
So we'll start with sports first. So I have been officiating high school football for, I believe this will be my 15th year now. And I have been blessed with in high school football. In 2020, I had the state championship game between Warren JFK and New Bremen. It was Division 7 that year, and that was held at Massillon, Washington. And that was the year of COVID, so they'd kind of moved them around. I'd like to say that was the biggest game I ever worked. I guess on the stage it was a state championship game. But the week before that, I was lucky enough to officiate Massillon, Washington, and Cincinnati, LaSalle in the state semifinal, where there was 7 kids that had signed Division I letter of intents. It was a crazy game of just the athleticism that was on that field. It was nuts. So in the grand scheme of things, that was probably the biggest game. Was at Massillon, Washington, Cincinnati, LaSalle. And I've been fortunate enough. I've seen some great players. So this past year, week 1, I opened up at Bell Fountain, where they have that quarterback. He's committed to Ohio State. So week 1, I had that game. Got to see him play. I've officiated games where Stanley Jackson, his sons, they were the quarterback and the running back for the Westerville school they played for. Will Smith, who played for Ohio State, I had his son in a game. Countless people. The Stover kid from Big Walnut, I can't remember his first name, and if you're listening, I apologize for not knowing it. And to backtrack, his cousin, who just finished his career at Ohio State, he didn't attend school in Morrow County. He attended in Lexington, which is in Richland, but lives in Morrow County, is from Morrow County. Cade Stover.
Cade Stover,
yep. So his cousin graduated from Big Walnut. I had their game when they played Delaware Hayes this year. So I've been in some big games with some big players.
Big games, and you've even been tackled by a player. I saw a video that's been a couple of years ago. Maybe you got laid out.
That was Licking Heights Licking Valley and Watkins Memorial, where I took that shot. And for a second, I didn't think I was going to get up, but thankfully I did. Got up. I wasn't hurt. Trotted on down the field and set the ball. And
now before we move on, refereeing football, do you ref a certain position, the same position every game? Are you assigned to one spot, or you move around, do different jobs?
So on Friday nights, you're assigned to one spot, and I'm the umpire. So I'm the guy that I set the ball every play. I run from sideline to sideline to get the ball, get it set. I mark off penalty enforcement. So
okay, so you do the same thing. Are you familiar with Terry Killens, who just officiated the Super Bowl? He's from Cincinnati, first player to play in a Super Bowl and officiate a Super Bowl.
I did read about that.
And so he played at Penn State and played in the National Football League, and then he just officiated the game. And through my son, have a connection to who he is and paid attention to his job, same position. So that's pretty cool. So that's football. You also officiate wrestling. Talk about that.
Officiate high school wrestling. Been doing that 6 years now. I was up in Norwalk 2 weeks ago. Had the district tournament, and then my season ended there. Haven't done the state tournament yet. Someday maybe. But 6 years before that I was coaching, so it's why I only got 6 years officiating wrestling. But district tournament was great. A lot of great wrestling there. Great matches. Some of the kids, there was a kid from Bexley that was at that Norwalk district. He went on to win a state championship, I think at 106 pounds. So I like you mentioned earlier when we were just chit-chatting, I'd get on Bomb's page and I'd look at the brackets and see how the people were doing at the district we were at, plus follow the kids from Morrow County that were wrestling. So
nice. So that's officiating. I know you have a couple other side gigs that you're interested in as of late. Talk about a couple of those things you got yourself into.
Well, besides officiating, I also have a auctioneer license and a real estate license.
You want to sell me this phone here, something real quick, show people what you got?
But I hear that you do auctioneering as well.
Well, my level of auctioneering, though, John's a little bit different than yours. Mine comes from my days of growing up with my dad, who liked to auctioneer some stuff in a garage or maybe uptown at the tavern, and I just kind of picked up with his love for that too. But as a young kid, I tell people locally, some of my friends know the story. Dad had cassette tapes in his truck, and if I would drive his truck and put a cassette tape in, and it was auctioneer, beginners for auctioneers, so I would drive down the road and, literally say, $1 bill, $1 bill, $1 bill, $2 bill, and do those things. I still do them today, and I enjoy that stuff, but definitely not to the level that you're at.
Well, I don't know. You haven't heard me though. So some people they'll come up and go, I really like you. I can understand what you're saying. So I by trade, I am not that fast. I help people out. We got an auction tomorrow, so I'll be helping there. I'm not overly fast, but so we want to sell this phone. So all right, so what it is, it's a Samsung phone with a OtterBox case. So who's going to give me 50, 25, 15, 10? Thank you, 10, now 5, what do you get 5, 15, 10, 15, now 5, 5, what do you get 5? Thank you, now 20, 15, 20, now 20, we get 20, now 20, now 20, what do you get 20, got 15, now 20, 15, now 20, we get now 25, 5, now 5, what do you get 5, half 20, now 25, 20, now 5, 5, what do you get 5, now 25? Sold, $20.
That's what we're talking about. Hey, and you heard it here first, man. It's John Hinton selling it. I think auctioneering is great, man. I can really get caught up if I got some downtime, listen to a YouTube video or something of some auctioneering going on, and that's good stuff, man. I thank you for doing that. I think that's going to be cool, and I think I'll hear some feedback from that of people that listen to this podcast and talk about that. Anything else when we talk about your hobbies and extracurricular activities outside of the office of sheriff?
I'd have to think if I got any others. Other than, spending time with my kids and my wife, when I can, we go camping a lot in the summer. We got an older RV, it's, that thing it's a 93, I believe, but it does the job for where we go. We'll go to the local state park there in Mount Gilead, and we'll book a weekend, and the kids think that's the greatest thing ever. And I swore I'd never go camping, but we got invited to the state park one weekend by one of the deputies, John Atwell, that works for me. He said, "Hey, stop on out, bring the wife and kids, and we'll have some hamburgers and all that." So we did, and get there, and the kids they were fascinated by the camper, and they were in and out of that thing, and they were begging to go camping. And my neighbor just a couple weeks later just happened to be selling his RV because he bought a new one. And next thing I know, my wife, "Hey, I got this RV. I need you to drive it home." And son of a gun drove an RV home, and we've never looked back. Kids love it, and since it makes them happy, it makes me happy. So we go camping, and they're counting the days down to when we're going this year. So
oh yeah, man, it's such a trendy thing too. And you talked about one of your deputies inviting you there. It's kind of what I've seen through my life and friends that get into camping. I mean, somebody gets into it, brings their friend into it or their family into it, and it's a trendy thing, and know a lot of people enjoy their recreational time doing those things. Let's get back to talking about sheriff stuff. What year were you elected? How many years have you been the sheriff? And are you on the ballot next week to be reelected?
So I am on the ballot next week. Thankfully, I'm unopposed. You know, you run two ways, scared or unopposed. And I'm unopposed, and I've been sheriff. So it'd actually be 8 years, July 1st. Sheriff Brenneman, who was the sheriff before me, he had stepped down. June 30th would have been his last day. So then I took over July 1st of 16, but my term didn't begin until that first Monday of 17, my actual term. So I finished his out. So I'll be seeking my third term as sheriff.
All right, that's awesome. You know, and so we record this early. I mean, people listen to these things probably know that they're not live streamed and posted. This will be released in April. So we're right before the primary election, and you know, it's right before us. It's an important election. I know there's a lot of focus around the security of the polling sites and boards of elections across the state of Ohio and across the country right now, with just some things that are happening across the nation. And one of the cool things about the office of sheriff is we're responsible for security of those locations. Do you do anything different? Will you do anything different on Tuesday to support your boards of elections in Morrow County?
So we go to every polling precinct. You know, we'll have 3 or 4 deputies on that day, and they will stop at every precinct. I stop at my home precinct. I stop by other ones I drive by. And one thing I do is when the polls are closed, I'll be at the Board of Elections, and I will hang out there until all them ballots get back. And then after that, I either leave or I hang out. They'll pass around how the votes are going. So I go there myself to make sure there's no problems and to make sure that the ballots actually get back. Because if they don't, someone's got to go find them. And, so I'll jump in the truck if somebody's not reporting back right away, or if they can't get a hold of them, go out and try to find them.
Yeah, I do kind of the same thing on election day. Once the polls close, then I go to the Board of Elections personally, as you do, and it's pretty cool. You know, you stand around, there's typically a couple print newspaper folks or some other elected officials, rather they're on the ballot or just concerned about what's going on. And there's been times where there might be an issue at a polling site or something that was left there, and then I will take a representative from each party, from a Democratic Party, Republican Party, and drive them to the polling site to go in and get the piece that they need, drive it back to the Board of Elections. That hasn't happened for quite a while here, but I do enjoy being there. I stay until basically they tell me I can go home after all the polls are in, and they'll print that preliminary copy of their unofficial results and give it to us, and everyone gets excited about those things and make our way home. Let's talk about the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. John, you hold an executive leadership position in that role. 2024, you are the third vice president, correct?
I am, yes.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, if you will. What's your buy-in to the association? Why do you feel that it's important for John Hinton to be involved to the level that you are?
So the big reason why I've gotten to the level I'm at is I want to learn more about being sheriff, the office of sheriff, to serve the people of Morrow County better. What better way to do that than to actually, be involved in the BSSA with, sheriffs who's been sheriffs a lot longer than me, yourself included. You're running for your 4th term now?
Correct.
So, one more term than I have, but when I got questions, I pick up the phone. I'll call Sheriff Riggenbaum, Van Wert County, if I end up with a question on CCW. And I found myself calling him so much, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to join his committee. So now I'm part of the CCW committee. So when we meet, then, I'm there just trying to learn more about that. The guy, well, there's 2 I lean on the most, and I feel bad for one of them. When I first became sheriff, I think I was calling him every day, which is Sheriff Schaefer over in Knox, and he's going to retire at the end of this term. That guy, man, I felt like I was on the phone with him every day, but he would answer every time. And if he didn't answer, he'd call me right back. So I bounced a lot of things off him. And then Sheriff Kenton Crawford, and they're both adjoining sheriffs to me. So I kind of bounced things off them. And Sheriff Kent, I think, will probably be your next guest. He's right behind me as treasurer this year. So it's executive secretary, treasurer, and then third vice president. So.
Correct. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I was elected with both those guys, spent 3 weeks in our newly elected sheriff training with them, sharp guys. And you're right. And that's one of the things that I found through my affiliation with the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association Board of Directors. It's a commitment. I mean, we're making trips to Columbus almost, pretty much monthly. There's a lot of training opportunities. But I feel so much more educated on topics, things that are happening, legislation that's being developed or that makes its way through to a bill or becomes law or not. And when I'm talking with my constituents here locally, I have some sort of competency about me to be able to conversate with them or answer their questions or concerns. We get called to council meetings or township trustee meetings and they ask us questions. That's a humbling thing, man. That's pretty cool to be a part of. And I think if we want to be as educated as we can, it kind of starts with that association. And you know this just as well as I do. And in the third podcast, we really not got into this a whole lot, but we can't get much better than Bob Cornwell and Mona Cornwell, our directors in the association. Been there, north of 40 years, both of them, and the experience that they have. You call Bob Cornwell with a question about a revised code section, right? Or you want to say, hey, can I spend money on this? And that gentleman can rip off to you a revised code section, the code section, more than likely an attorney general's opinion that has been written at some point in the past 20, 30 years, and he could probably tell you the number. I mean, what a resource is Bob Cornwell. Let's talk about that for a minute. We haven't done that in the first couple episodes, but it hasn't really led into that. But that's huge for us in our positions as sheriff.
Great people, and you pick up the phone anytime and call them. 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer. If they don't answer, you get a text of, I'll call you right back. But yes, wealth of knowledge. I don't know what we will do when they decide to retire. If they ever do, I hope they don't. I hope as long as I'm sheriff, they're still there. Because like you said, it's a wealth of knowledge. It's a resource. I don't know how you would replace that resource or how either one of them would even be able to pass on the knowledge that they've gained. And I forget how many years they've been there. I want to say Bob kept saying he got there in like 83 or something.
Yeah, Bob, right? I think, is about 41, and Mona's 42 or 43. They've been there a long time, and I concur with you. I think there's at least 88 people that I know that do not want those two folks to retire anytime soon, man. We just can't say enough about them. Let's just say a couple more questions and answers before we take our ad break. John, talk about the size of your agency. How many employees do you have? What kind of jail do you have? How big's your jail? And I think you hold some federal inmates maybe too. You can talk about your office a little bit.
So we have approximately 60 people that work at the sheriff's office, myself included. About half of them work in the jail. There's about 30 people there. And those numbers kind of change. We're probably not at 60 right now because, population in the jail was down. So as people were leaving, we didn't replace as much, but now we're in the process. We're doing some more interviews. Inmate population's picking back up. Have about 20 people, including detectives on the enforcement side, and I believe there's 2 dispatchers a shift roughly. So, probably about almost 10 dispatchers we have when you start counting in days off, things like that. We used to house federal inmates. We used to house ICE immigration inmates. We don't house those anymore. We stick strictly with just county inmates, but we do house for other counties. We house for Wayne County. We're housing for Knox for females, but they've recently expanded their jail, which there's a lot of grant money out there right now where a lot of people is going to be expanding their jails or possibly building new ones. We house for, all the way down in Pike County, Meigs County, used to house for Lawrence County. Just anyone that, basically has an overflow that needs some help, we'll take their inmates. The facility is 126 beds, and I think it was just over 100 is what we had in there the other day. I haven't looked today to see what the population is, but, it's a 25-year-old facility. We did apply for some grant funding to try to do some maintenance on the building, hoping we get that. We haven't heard yet. But I don't know if anyone's heard whether they've gotten any of that grant funding yet or not through DRC.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people trying to get some of that, so it'll be interesting to see how that all comes out in the wash. And you talked about outhousing for different facilities. Tell the folks that might not know, because this thing it's going to go statewide, it's going to go countrywide, and it could go all over the world with podcasts and the technology that is available to us. Where are you located geographically in the state of Ohio? You're pretty central, aren't you?
Yes. So if you go to Knox County, there's a place called Centerburg, which they claim they're the geographic spot of Ohio, and they may very well be. I've never researched it. We're just north of that. So we're about 45 miles north of Columbus. We are the southwestmost county in the Northeast District of the BSSA. So there's 4 districts, Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, and Northwest. I think you're in the Northwest, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's, it's divided up equally. So we're like where everything splits between the Northwest, Northeast, and, all of them. But yeah, we're pretty much smack dab in the middle. This was 2 hours to get here, so,
right. All right.
Which was great though. I enjoyed the drive.
Well, right before we take the break, this is one of my favorite questions I'm going to ask you about. John, tell the listeners, what is your passion about law enforcement? What drives John Hinton to get up every morning, put this uniform on, and go to work for your people?
That is just to make Morrow County a better place to live and work for everyone, and that's, making it better every day. It's a great place to live and work. I love living there, born and raised there, graduated high school from there, but it can always be better, so every day that is what I want to do. Is I want to make the county better. I want to make the sheriff's office better. And really that's what drives me, I want to give everyone a place to be proud of, whether that's the sheriff's office, whether that's the, Morrow County where you live. That to me, that's the number one goal.
All right. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk more about some law enforcement things, particularly, and we'll wrap this thing up here in just a little bit after this break.
This program is sponsored by the Buckeye State Educational Foundation. This foundation is in Columbus, Ohio, and was established in 1978. The Buckeye Sheriff's Educational Foundation provides seminars and training classes for the educational benefit of current sheriffs and deputies from across Ohio. The foundation also supports programs such as DARE, SRO, Jail Administrators Conference, newly elected sheriffs training, along with the image-enhancing projects of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. Annual training includes a 16-hour course that is required by law for all 88 sheriffs in Ohio, as well as spring and fall seminars for all sheriffs and deputies that wish to attend. This foundation supports the efforts of this podcast to promote Ohio sheriffs and deputies and their mission to serve and protect the citizens of Ohio.
Welcome back to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. I'm Sheriff Jason Landers, Sheriff of Paulding County, and we're here today with our special guest. It's Sheriff John Hinton from Morrow County. John, we're going to talk right now about some crime in Morrow County. What kind of things do you have going on? What's your most persistent issue that you're dealing with today?
So we have the same problems every other county has, which is, I'd say probably the number one thing we deal with day in, day out is probably domestic disputes, which, as you know, can be one of the most dangerous things that you can deal with. That's probably the thing we deal with the most. And then followed up, you got your property crimes. Everywhere, it doesn't matter where you live, you've been affected by the drug epidemic. It seems that it's kind of changed here recently. It seemed like it was always heroin. Now it seems like it seems to be trending towards meth more. Everyone's got a problem, whether it's heroin, whether it's meth, whether it's cocaine, crack cocaine. Every county in the state of Ohio, every county, and every United States is affected by some form of drug problem. So it's not just us, but. Those are probably the three biggest things we deal with day in, day out.
Yeah, and I would agree that, all of us in law enforcement have kind of the same problems that we deal with. Talk about any hurdles in our profession. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you that's just, I use the term hurdle, just something we have to get over in our profession to be able to do our jobs effectively?
I think probably rebuilding the trust with people, which, it seemed over the last few years had been affected, whether, you wanted to talk about the George Floyd incident, the incident that happened in Tennessee, or any other incident. It's, I feel we need to rebuild the trust with the community. And that's probably the biggest hurdle now. And I think we're getting there. I really do. Because if you look, there is a hiring issue, and that's everywhere. That's nationwide when it comes to law enforcement or public safety. But it's getting better. We used to struggle. We have a dispatcher opening right now, I think 2. And we would, if we had an opening in the past, we would have put it out there. We'd get 1 applicant. We're like, man, what the heck are we going to do? With this last opening that we have for these 2 positions, I think we received approximately 15 applications for 2 positions, which, has been unheard of. But that comes back to the work that the sheriff's office and the commissioners have done at Morrow County. We've worked on getting the wage up 52% in 8 years. When I started there in 1998 at 19 years old, it was $8.50 an hour, and I thought I was making great money, and at the time it may have been, but not anymore, so we've gotten the pay up 52% in 8 years. We're retaining people. We're no longer, just training people and then they leave. So, but getting back to, I guess the original question is I think that's where we got to get back to really community engagement, reaching out to the public, and letting them know, hey, we're here to help, and we're human as well. We bleed just as same color you bleed. We have the same problems you have. The only difference is we wore the badge for a living. That's the only difference. Other than that, we're human. And if we just treat people how they want to be treated, how we would want to be treated, I think things would get better.
Yeah, John. So you really just, spoke a synopsis of this podcast and the vision for it right there, and what you talked about as a hurdle. The community outreach. That's what we're trying to accomplish with this. Connect sheriffs and deputies and employees with the communities they serve, and let them know a couple things, that we have a crisis too. I've had a personal crisis in my life, and people came together to support my family, right? And Sheriff Riggenball in episode number 2 talked about a personal crisis in his life and the people that come together for him. And we do bleed the same color, and we do have issues. And one of the things that I think we do with this podcast is that we have to write our own narrative. If we want to let these urban cities and these other places across our country, across the world, and those outlets that want to try to say that one incident that happens, it's the same across the board. It's just not right. And so I think we have to control our own narrative. We're trying to do that locally, and maybe you are as well. I'm not a huge social media fan myself personally, but I have some staff that work for me that's crafty with that stuff, trying to relate more to the public and tell them our story from our perspective. And I hear that feedback again in a coffee shop, and they say, man, that's a great TikTok video. Well, I didn't make it. I didn't even dream it up, but I have some people that can do those types of things and let people know. We did I think they did a TikTok, which then goes out on Instagram or Facebook or something, like around Christmas time, right? And just, to show us with a smile on our face and bouncing around doing things. We are humans, and we have a different job when we go to work every day than some folks do. But you're right, and it is a hurdle, and I'm glad to hear you say that your applications are coming back up. There was a time in our careers where we would not hire a handful of really good applicants for a job. And then we got into this position, and some of us aren't out of it yet, where we can't get one good applicant for a job. So it's a blessing, I think, for you to say that you're getting to the point and seeing a turnaround where you're starting to get some quality applicants for jobs. I think we're seeing that too a little bit for some job postings that we had, and that's promising. Let's talk a little bit about a revised code section in the Ohio Revised Code that has to do specifically with the Office of Sheriff. And one of the codes that I picked for today is timely, because we've experienced some devastation in Ohio last night, and specifically in Logan County, Ohio, which is down in Bell Fountain. Sheriff Randy Dodds just has a real travesty right now down there with a tornado that came through and created some some fatal damage down there. One of the codes I picked for today's episode is Ohio Revised Code 31107, and in that section it talks about sheriff's mutual aid. Tell the listeners a little bit what 31107, it's subsection B, that talks about how the sheriff can call for mutual aid. Tell the listeners a little bit about what that means.
Well, first, my heart goes out to the people of Logan County. We had a tornado, last year, I believe, year before, maybe, I can't remember which, year or two ago, but not near the devastation that they went through last night. So my heart does go out to them. But the ORC section you're talking about with mutual aid, in a nutshell, it says, any sheriff in the state can call on, any other sheriff or any other PD, anything like that, for mutual aid to where, hey, we need some help, come help us. And vice versa, you could say, hey, I need some help up here in Paulding County. Well, I can send you a couple guys. And the beauty of that is you and I, other than your height, we are dressed the same. So no one would know, other than, of course, the patch, that I'm a sheriff if I was up here, because uniform's the same. And so we did mention your height, though. How tall are you? You got to tell the people.
Somewhere around 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah, so,
give or take a centimeter or so.
Which is crazy, because if I'm 5'10", I'm lucky. That might be with my boots on, But anyways, getting back to the mutual aid. So I woke up to the email because it came out late. But there was an email from Bob Cornwell this morning I woke up to, where Logan County's asked for 50 deputies, with the devastation they had. And Sheriff Dodd's down there in Logan, he can, with this Ohio Revised Code section, he can ask for deputies from anywhere. And Sheriff Everhart in Hardin County, he's kind of spearheading that for Sheriff Dodd's. So, you got two sheriffs, two different counties, two different ways of doing things. For the most part, there's 88 of us, there's 88 different ways to do something. You got them coming together for the greater good and the cause to, help the people of Logan County. And Sheriff Everhart's not going to send Sheriff Dodd's a bill. That's not how the mutual aid works. It's you need help, we're going to come. Same with any PD. And if I missed anything, feel free to elaborate on this the mutual aid part of this.
Yeah, no, and you're right. It brings back to me. I've had a few instances in my 3 terms as sheriff where I've needed some mutual aid and needed a lot of it. Couple times making the national news for various reasons that happened. Probably the most recent one that comes to my mind, we had a Navy seaman from Paulding that was killed in a domestic terrorism situation down a southern state. And his memorial service was going to be held here at the high school he graduated from. And my staff, we couldn't handle the potential threats that come in those types of situations when people want to come and protest them, right? So I put out a request through our Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, and we had over 100 people come here. And as you said, we all wear the same uniform. We have an Ohio Administrative Code that dictates what it is that we wear as sheriffs in Ohio and our deputies. It dictates what our cars look like, how they're marked. There's no other way to do it. Unfortunately, there's some that choose to do it a different way, and they shouldn't, but that's a whole different issue and a different topic. But when those folks came to Paulding, no one here in my community knew anything different than the sheriffs are here to help us in our little community. I didn't get a bill from anyone. One of my first phone calls came from Jerry Green as a sheriff in Mahoning County, and he's 4.5 hours on the other. I'm on the Indiana state line. He's clear over on the eastern side of Ohio. One of my first phone calls after that email from Bob Cornwell went out was, "Hey, this is Jerry. I know I'm a long ways away, brother, but what do you need?" And that's the brotherhood and sisterhood that we're in, man, and it's pretty special. It really is. And, we could talk about that kind of all day long, but to keep things going here, we're near the end of the episode. Talk a little bit, if you would, John, about continual professional training, CPTs in law enforcement, 24 hours mandated by the state for us, 8 hours are mandatory hours. There's 16 that are up to the appointing authority, and that's for all 900 plus law enforcement agencies across Ohio. What do you think about CPTs? Does it work? Could you see a change in it? Any types of training you would like to see come our way, or are you just satisfied with the way it is?
So CPT it's a good thing. I'm glad. I don't even know how many years it's been around. It's been longer than 4.
Well, my career, it's hit or
now.
miss. And it just, one of the caveats to CPT is it's mandatory if there's funding through the legislature to pay us for continuing professional training. So in my tenure, there's years we have not had CPT at all. Right now, I think it's probably here to stay for a while. The legislature has appropriated several $1 million through the biennium budget moving forward. And I think there's probably some, through the legislature, if you will, a sense for a need for that CPT. So that 24 hours probably going to be here to stay for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, well, and I tell you one plus about it is, and it's not this way at the Morrow County Sheriff's Office too much anymore. There used to be a time you had to fight to get training, and if it was in the budget, you may get to go. If it's not in the budget, well, you need to find a free one, because it just paid training didn't exist. And that's been several years ago, a long time ago. The budgets weren't that great. They're better now. So we can afford to send people to additional training on top of the CPT. But if things ever got back to where you couldn't afford to send someone to additional training, you would have the CPT that they can get the 24 hours of training at. You got your mandatory topics, you got your other topics you can go for it. If I had one complaint about the CPT, my complaint would be I wish the mandatory topics were ready January 1st of the year. Here we are, we're in the middle of March, and you still can't get the mandatory topics online. That would be my only complaint with it, but you're trying to, at the same time, you got to think, you're trying to put training together and get it pushed out for, however many law enforcement officers we have in Ohio.
Nearly 30,000.
And that's the number that popped in my head, but I wasn't for sure, and I didn't want to just blurt out a number and be completely wrong and, get called out.
I've been wrong before. I might be off just a bit, but I feel pretty comfortable with that.
Well, and you and I was at a conference, was it last week or the week before, the executive leadership, and I believe that number was brought up of how many there was, and that's where the 30,000 was coming into my head at. But so the Attorney General, he has a big job. Well, and the people that work for him that set this training up. So you gotta make sure when you do push it out that it's flawless. So on the other hand, I can see why it's still not out there yet. But every day that we go farther and farther, that's less time. That I only have approximately 20 people that's got to go through it. If you look at Cuyahoga County or Franklin County, Hamilton County, which I believe is your 3 biggest sheriff's offices in the state, Hamilton, for example, may have 700 certified people. It's going to take a little bit for 700 people to take that training. So that would be my only complaint. But like I said, on the other hand, I see why it's not there yet, because once you push it out, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, and I think, from the executive summit that you talked about that we were at with the leadership from the Department of Public Safety, Andy Wilson, the director, and Colonel Jones of State Highway Patrol, the Chiefs of Police Organization, the Sheriff's Organizations, BCI, everybody that was around, the general has put into place a person, Tom Quinlan, who I think he's a pretty solid dude. And I've been able to have some conversations with him. I think he's on the right track. Everyone, you can always get behind, well, I don't have enough help, or, I'm short-staffed and all these things. He kind of owns the fact that, in some terms, they've dropped the ball a little bit with the timeliness of CPT, because there was conversation about having that ready in January for everybody to take. But I do believe he has lost personnel that were tasked with the responsibility of producing those documents for us. I do think they're working on it. I really want to give him a chance, an opportunity. I think he's a pretty squared away guy, that he's going to get those things set up for us. And I concur with you that the sooner, the better, that's for sure. Talk a little bit about, we talked about how humbling the office of sheriffs is. What do you like most about your position, John? I mean, there's all kinds of things that we do. Is there anything that kind of stands out that you really, really enjoy about holding that elected office of sheriff?
Honestly, probably what I like about it the best is going out and meeting the people. Seeing them. If we got and I know I do it. You probably do it as well. There's probably every sheriff in the state probably does it. You got those events after hours or on weekends, where you go to it. It's not a 40-hour a week job for us. It is. It's more than that. It may be 50, 60 hours a week. I get there. I try to get there by 6 o'clock every morning. Usually I'm there by 5:30 in the morning. That way I can see third shift before they leave. And then I see day shift when they come in. I try to still be there at 3 o'clock to see second shift when they get there. That way I can see all three shifts. Not always successful with second shift, but, so I guess, meeting the people, that includes the people that work for you, so I try to do that every day. And then, seeing the people in the public, going to events, that's probably the favorite thing I have about being sheriff.
Yeah, you talk about the hours that you work. And just last night, I was made aware of a zoning inspector meeting for the county. All the county zoning inspectors going to get together, and the prosecutors and the judge talk about what's going on with zoning in our townships. And I was grading my driveway, just cruising in a tractor, listening to the radio, and it just hit me at the last minute about this 6 o'clock meeting. And I literally had to stop. I run in, tell my wife, don't make me any supper. As she's standing at the stove, I'm heading to Paulding. I got a meeting, and I jump in my car, and off I go to Paulding, and took care of it when I got home. And it's just really cool. I mean, you get to talk to good people. These are good people doing the work of the community, and I don't like to miss those things. I enjoy being invited to them, and so it's not just an 8 to 5 gig. And if something goes down on Sunday morning, you got to go. I mean, that's what you're called to do, and it is a calling, I think, as well. As we start to wrap things up, John, are you doing anything within your office as far as we talked a little bit about writing your own narrative, marketing yourselves, recruiting? Is there anything going on in Morrow County where you're trying to draw in people into our profession or specifically into your office?
So we started an early job placement program. So we go to the vocational schools. There's a vocational school in Richland County, and there's one in Marion County. So we go to them and we recruit high school seniors that are in the law enforcement programs at these vocational schools. And what they end up doing is the second half of their school year, their senior year, as long as they're 18 and we have openings, we hire them into the jail. And instead of going to school that day, they come work. They work 40 hours a week. They're making a great wage. Being 18 years old, they're paying into PRS. I get them, I pull them in like, look, you need to invest in deferred comp, so they'll put money in deferred comp. I had one that he was 18, had just graduated high school, and we hired him while he was still in high school. He graduates, he turns around, buys a duplex, all right, lives in one half, rents the other one out. Had he not got the opportunity to get in the early job placement, he'd have never bought that house and wouldn't have a duplex and wouldn't be renting one side out. So that's what we kind of started, was this early job placement program, and it's been great. I think we've only lost 2 since they've came in. One because they got hired by another PD that was going to send them to the academy. Same with the other one. He just graduated from academy and got hired by a PD. So we have taken this program where we've kind of transitioned it towards hiring these kids, and and I call them kids, they're adults, but I'm 45 years old now, and I'm hiring people that they were, I was on the road when they were born. It's like, it's kind of crazy, because I look at myself, it's like I don't think I'm that old, but then again, A lot of people you're hiring now, you're old enough to be their dad now, So we actually just had one of them that came through this program. He just graduated from the police academy. So he's the first one that we've hired through this program that we have sent through the academy. And I put myself through the academy. I had to go get a second job to pay for the academy. Worked third shift with split days off to go to the academy because, back then no one would pay for your academy. You had to do it on your own. Now how times have changed is we're hiring these people that are still in high school, bringing them on, once they show that they're committed to the profession, committed to Morrow County, we find a way to get them to police academy. And then, now we're growing our own deputies, and they're invested, and they go to the academy, and, we put them on the road. We just, we had, and this kid, I call him a kid, I apologize. But so he was in the jail, and, OSP's got the free academy down there, paid for by casino money. And said, hey, I can get you in the academy. Do you want to go? Well, yeah. I said, well, here's the deal. You got to live down there 5 days a week, and they're probably going to yell at you, and they're going to make you run a lot. Can you deal with that? Yeah. He just finished up, 2 months ago, maybe. Brought him up from the jail, got him in dispatch now because we make everyone, work in dispatch for a little bit. That's part of the training for the road. And once he finishes up in dispatch, and then he's going to start his FTO on the road. And, he's 21, 22 years old. And, and he also coaches wrestling at Highland. So, and I got another deputy for me. He officiates wrestling, coaches wrestling as well. So, he does things outside of the sheriff's office, coaching. So, it's a win-win for me, got people that are from the county that are invested in making Morrow County a better place, making the sheriff's office a better place. And, now they've been through the academy, and, here they are about to be a road unit.
Yeah, it's a good product. I'm interested in that. I really think that's the State Highway Patrol Peace Officer Academy that they run is probably a really good thing. Just kind of paying attention to it a little bit, talking to some of the leadership in the patrol that oversees those. Major Kimmer and Major John Altman was there at one point overseeing those types of things. I would guess that you get a really, really good product if you can successfully complete what they have to offer down there. And the fact that it's funded through those casino dollars makes it really well inconvenient. I mean, we're 2.5 hours plus away from the State Highway Patrol Academy. So to send someone down there, for 5 days at a time and to do that for several weeks, several months, it would take the right person to be able to do that. But the product's got to be really well. Sheriff Hinton, I would like to thank you for being a part of today's episode. We would like to thank the Buckeye State Educational Foundation for their sponsorship. For Sheriff John Hinton, I'm Jason Landers. I'll be right back here next month featuring another Ohio sheriff or deputy on the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Bob Cornwell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association located in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for listening to our podcast today. It was brought to you by the Buckeye Sheriff's Educational Foundation. With this podcast, we are striving to introduce you to the sheriffs and deputies from around the state of Ohio and recognize their great work that they do for the citizens of Ohio. For more information about our organization, Google BuckeyeSheriffs.org. Thank you.